All right, everybody, welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we're going to be recapping week 12 of the NFL season, some Thanksgiving games, a Black Friday game. How was your Thanksgiving weekend, Josh?
I got a couple days off, so it was pretty relaxing, pretty good. I had to go back to work on Saturday, which was absolutely brutal, but we're gonna forget about that since we've moved on. But from a football standpoint, not the best. Some things in my personal agendas could have happened better, but we're going week by week and we're struggling, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it.
And sorry to put a little dagger in your chest and step on you while you're already down, but I did win the picks this week. So I got 2 weeks in a row. I'm the picks champ, and I overtook your record by 2 games this season. I have 2 games more than you this season. We're really tight, and we both have a really good record, honestly.
Brutal. But here's a crown for you, Dan. I won't put it on myself.
Thank you, thank you. That crown's for me. And then with
Congrats.
that, we'll just get right into the stud and goof of the week because I feel like there's a lot of games that kind of cover this week, and we have 2 studs of the week this week because they both absolutely deserve it. I do want to shout out real quick Kyren Williams because I feel like in any normal week he probably would be the stud of the week. So shout out to Kyren Williams, and we'll do our weekly shout out to Dak Prescott, who always has a shout to be stud of the week at this point. But Allen and Hurts, we wanted to highlight both of them because they showed why you draft both of these elite quarterbacks early in fantasy football. They literally flip a fantasy game upside down and can win any game by themselves. So true aliens, their rushing upside makes them just absurd. I heard that Josh Allen's rushing stats alone equivalated to 500 passing yards in fantasy, and Jalen Hurts equivalated to 440 passing yards. So that's just why you draft these guys early. They're ridiculous. They're stupid. And I guess I'll read off their stats. Josh Allen, 29 for 51, 339 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, and 81 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. And then Jalen Hurts, 200 yards, 18 for 31, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, and then 65 yards and also 2 touchdowns on the ground. So both of them just absolutely absurd.
Yeah, it just shows you why these guys are picked so high and why they're so elite because they get it done through the air and on the ground. They can beat you anyway. And this game was really just a coin toss. I mean, Josh Allen could have been the king of this game had him and Gabe Davis been on the same page in overtime and Gabe Davis, caught that touchdown or Josh Allen throw the route a little bit better. But I mean, they were one play away from actually winning this game. So yeah, that's why we're giving a duel because it really could have gone either way, and these guys were just on fire. I mean, they were just carrying their teams through the ground, through the air, and it was just fun to see. This was probably the game of the week.
100%. And we'll go on to our goof of the week, a different vibe. We got 2 goofies on the graphic. We've got the 2 times on the graphic because Austin Eckler is the one and only 2-time goof of the week so far, and he got it 2 weeks in a row. So Austin Eckler, the fumble king, just fumbling games away. A star shouldn't be fumbling as much as he is. And he had 10 carries for 32 yards, 3.2 yards per carry. Just a fantasy disaster the last few weeks. What are your thoughts on Eckler?
Yeah, not to mention, at the end of the game, a big drop on third down that would have probably resulted in a first down that would have kept them going in the game. So yeah, Austin Eckler is clearly and I'm surprised he had 3.2 yards a carry. It seemed worse. But yeah, Austin Eckler is just brutal this year. He seems to just shows you how the running back position, once you hit a certain age, you really just decline. And we were he should have had a goof of the week last week just for that run against Green Bay to the outside where he hit a top speed of 13 miles per hour. Trey Pipkins, the right tackle on that play, was recorded at a faster speed. And so that viral meme that's been going around, he was actually clocked in at 13 miles per hour, which is just absolutely hysterical. But yeah, Austin Eckler, goofball, something's not right with him. He's lost a step. I think his career is coming to an end. I mean, he might be relevant in some kind of passing thing if he can get better, but he's coming to the twilight of his career.
13 miles per hour for Eckler. Do you think we could go and time you this weekend? And do you think you could run faster than 13?
100%. I'm hitting 15, 16, easy.
We
With my
honestly should
eyes
probably do it.
closed.
We should just do it for the meme to see if you can beat 13.
100%. Trey Pipkins is running faster than that in pads. I'm running faster than that.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. We'll get on to the recaps. We'll do kind of quick takeaways for each game, especially fantasy takeaways. But we'll start off with the Packers heading into Detroit and beating the Lions 29-22 on the road on Thanksgiving. And shout out to Jordan Love. This was, I mean, last week we said his game against the Chargers was his best game of his career, but this was easily his best game of his career. So he is just really clicking right now. He's playing a lot better. And Jordan Love kind of dominated this game. He was great. He was 22 for 32, 268 yards and 3 touchdowns and 0 picks. And he also had 39 through the ground. So he just had a really solid game. He kind of carried the Packers, and they honestly outplayed the Lions the entire game. They were the better team on the road. They just outplayed them. They kept the pedal on. And Jared Goff had a pretty rough game. Jared Goff, again, just isn't really being careful with the football. He didn't throw any picks, but he did fumble. So it's just scary for Goff.
Yeah, shout out Jay Love. I mean, these last 2 weeks he's really put it together, and kind of like we've said about some other quarterbacks, he's just playing surgical. You know, he's out there, he's not making his dumb mistakes he was earlier in the season. I mean, these last 2 games really defined, you know, like what we can see from Jordan Love, and it's super exciting. I mean, he did this without, you know, Aaron Jones, arguably their best player too, you know, on the offense. And so, I mean, he was awesome. And then Christian Watson finally had a good game. He finally looked relevant. He showed up on Thanksgiving. And this was a complete shocker to me. I really thought the Lions would come here and take care of business. They've lost like 7, I think, Thanksgiving games in a row. Now it's like 8. So I really thought that they would win this one, especially with Dan Campbell. But yeah, I mean, the Packers kind of out here shocking the world, you know, kind of making a comeback on their season.
Yeah, and when you look into fantasy, I think our biggest takeaway is Christian Watson. He had the 94 yards and a touchdown, by far his biggest game of the year. I think he had his biggest game of the year in the first quarter of this game. So it's really good to see that resurgence. It's been scary to start Watson, but I'm honestly kind of optimistic to start like Watson and Jaden Reed moving forward. I don't know about Dobbs. I feel like that's a little bit too much volatility. I don't know who Malik Heath is. He had 4 catches for 46 yards. I'll be honest, I don't know who Malik Heath is. That's crazy. But I am kind of optimistic to start Christian Watson and Jaden Reed with this Jordan Love emergence. Obviously, whatever running backs playing for the Packers you start. And then for the Lions, my one takeaway is David Montgomery. He just finds the end zone. He's such a good running back. That was a great signing. He's a really good football player. And then you know who you're starting for the Lions, Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra. And Gibbs.
Yeah, you said that just perfect. And yeah, I'm kind of optimistic and excited about Jaden Reed. Obviously, he didn't get it, and he got the touchdown, which kind of saved his fantasy relevance. I'm just optimistic he'll get more targets in the coming weeks when he's not playing a good Lions defense. But from a non-fantasy aspect, I want to shout out to you guys on the Packers defense. Jonathan Owens, who's not a household name, is really playing lights out football for the Packers. A very underrated DB. And then obviously we have to talk about Rashawn Gary and his big 3-sack game against Penny Sewell and Taylor Decker. That's just ridiculous. Most teams don't get home against the Lions, and he was able to get 3. So we got to shout those 2 out.
Rashawn Gary, Carl Brooks, just absolutely dominating on the defensive line. And Jonathan Owens, a good shout out as well. That pick 6. We'll get on to the second Thanksgiving game. The Commanders went into, I guess it's not the Commanders. The Redskins went into Dallas and lost to the Cowboys 45-10. Deron Bland, you are special. He is the takeaway of this game. He is special. 5 pick 6s this season. That's unheard of. That's Deion Sanders stuff. And I was telling Josh, like, just the way that Deron Bland moves after getting a pick and everything, he literally just looks like a video game character. It doesn't make sense. He definitely shouldn't have ran that pick 6 back. He shouldn't have. I don't think anyone else would have. He's different. Josh said he's kind of like an Antonio Cromartie type player. He really is. He's just special with the ball in his hands. He might not be the best blanketed shutdown corner, but Deron Bland is a superstar, and he's given the Cowboys a lot of points this year. The Cowboys defense and fantasy has been league winning. So shout out to the Cowboys, dominant, and Sam Howell a little bit of a rough outing on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Like we said in our preview, this was our Michael Myers bloody murder game of the week. And yeah, the Cowboys continually beat the absolute piss out of, lower end football teams, and they beat them bad. But I mean, that's great. I mean, they go out there and they get statement wins. I mean, this is a division opponent. The Commanders did play the Eagles twice, very good, but the Cowboys just came in and just made them look like it was, varsity versus JV. And then, yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about Deron Bland. I mean, Deron Bland should honestly, at this point, with setting that record and just how good he's played, should honestly be in talks for defensive player of the year. Obviously, it's really hard. You never see corners win it. You usually see edge rushers or defensive tackles with sacks. But I mean, 5 pick sixes, that is just absolutely ridiculous. We've never seen that kind of numbers before. And yeah, it should put him in consideration because I mean, game-changing plays like that are what win your football team games. And Deron Bland's done that more than anyone else in NFL history. So shout out to him. That was some special, really special record that he just broke.
Yeah, I think he is the defensive player of the year at this point. You have to give it to him. There's some really good edge rushers, so it will be interesting to see who it ends up going to. But fantasy takeaways, Commanders, it was rough. Terry McLaurin got there at the end. Curtis Samuel had a really good game. Brian Robinson kind of struggled. Not really much to take away for the Commanders at all. But for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb just keep absolutely dominating, keep rolling, and Tony Pollard's starting to get involved. He's starting to get things rolling, so you're excited about him. And Brandon Cooks had a really good game as well. So you're kind of not too much to take away in this one on fantasy, though.
No, not a lot. The players on the Cowboys you expect to get some, did get some. Obviously, a little bit disappointing game for Jake Ferguson. But I mean, everyone else is firing on all cylinders. And then, yeah, the Commanders, it's just hard because you never know who's going to go off that week. And obviously, this is one of their poor weeks playing the Cowboys. But it's Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin. You pick your poison on who's their wide receiver one that week because it just never seems to be consistent.
Yeah, and with that, we'll get on to the night Thanksgiving game. The 49ers went into Seattle and kind of beat on the Seahawks 31-13. And the Niners are clicking, man. They're looking like that well-oiled machine that they were at the beginning of the season that was rolling over everyone. I think they're probably the number one team in the NFL right now, just based off of looks. Brock Purdy, another really solid game. Deebo Samuel really getting involved, really getting everything going. And then Christian McCaffrey, this game was completely ran through McCaffrey. This was CMC's game. This was his night on Thanksgiving. 114 yards on 19 carries for 2 rushing touchdowns for McCaffrey and 5 catches for 25 yards in the air. So shout out to McCaffrey. He took over. And Seattle's offense, man, they have been a struggle. I know it's against a really good defense. Charvarius Ward balled in this one, but on DK Metcalf, he really just shut down DK Metcalf, by the way. But the Seahawks offense, man, has just been struggling in general. Charbonnet did not have a good night as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, shout out to the 49ers because, I mean, they just statement win after statement win these last few weeks, really showing why they are kind of wanting to put themselves back in that number one, power ranking slot with these wins. But yeah, the Seahawks, I don't know. It seems like something's just missing. It just seems like it's just not all there. Gino's not playing his best football, but I mean, the offensive talent is there. I mean, they've really rebuilt their offensive line really good. So it's just weird that it's not clicking better for the Seahawks. And I'm surprised they're 6-5 at this point. But I mean, you are playing the 49ers, and I just want to apologize for my George Kittle pick. I really thought that was a lock. Apparently they just wanted to use him as like a blocking tight end this week. So that's the risk, I guess, you get with the 49ers, which I'll try and be smarter next time with that. But yeah, I mean, the 49ers just used him as a blocking tight end, which is great because he's good at that. But it was not his night through the air. He was only 3 for 19. So a little disappointing there.
Yeah, and then fantasy takeaways, again, there's not really too much to take away. Debo, Ayuk do their thing. Kittle was definitely the goof of this game for sure. It was a goof to start Kittle. That was a bad game. But Jackson Smith and Jigba led the Seahawks receivers in receiving, so it was just kind of like a throwaway game. It was just weird to take away anything, really.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, shout out to 49ers really making a resurgence after those 3 brutal losses.
All right, and with that, we'll get on to the Black Friday football game. The Dolphins went into New York. He beat the Jets 34-13. It was just pure dominance. Javon Holland getting the pick 6 on a Hail Mary. It was just a disaster for New York, like we expected. It's looked the same as it has all year. I will say that. There's a lot of Jets fans saying they shouldn't have switched the quarterback position, but no, they just chose the wrong quarterback because Aaron Rodgers isn't really a good coach / manager, and Tim Boyle shouldn't be on an NFL roster. But if Simeon was in there, it would have looked a little bit better. But yeah, it's looked the same as it did the last 2 years and 11 weeks.
Yeah, you shouted that out perfect. Obviously, a great game for the Dolphins. I honestly thought Tua didn't play incredible, but Raheem Mostert was on fire. I mean, they were really running the ball. And then obviously Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle absolutely dominating Sauce Gardner in that Jets secondary, which was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, it really looked like a domination against them. But yeah, like you said, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is the coach and the manager of this team, and for whatever reason, he just doesn't want a good quarterback in there. And Tim Boyle kind of followed him from Green Bay to the Jets, which you can't really take Tim Boyle. Everyone knows Tim Boyle's not a good quality starting quarterback. So I'm not sure why they threw him out there. I'm not sure why Trevor Siemian didn't get an opportunity. But yeah, this one's just ultimately on the Jets. It's almost just like they're like trying to like scapegoat somebody, and they're trying to blame the offensive coordinator. It's like, no, you just have poor quarterback play. That's all it is. They're trying to find a way to scapegoat anyone but the quarterback, who was starting at the beginning of the season. But yeah, it just seems like it's just, yeah, you just don't have a good quarterback. That's what you're missing.
And now the Jets fans are going right to scapegoat on the quarterback once they get anyone in there. It's pretty funny. I honestly don't have anything to take away in this game. Brees Hall, absolutely disgusting. Garrett Wilson, disgusting. If you have any Jets options, I personally traded all of mine away before the trade deadline because I couldn't handle it. And for the Dolphins, there's not much to take away because they're all dominant and you start them every week.
Yep. I mean, Garrett Wilson found his way in the end zone, so you got some points there. But yeah, on a week-to-week basis, these guys are just brutal. And until Aaron Rodgers is back, then which won't be relevant for fantasy. Yeah, you're not starting any of these guys.
Yep. And with that, we'll get on to a much better game, a really competitive AFC South game. The Jaguars went into Houston and beat the Texans 24-21 on the road. And sorry for disrespecting you, Jaguars. We both picked the Texans, and I knew it was going to backfire. It was a great game, but the Jaguars played really good. They had a solid game. Trevor played some good football, honestly, really solid football. And then Dearness Johnson did a good job on the ground, complimenting Travis Etienne. So that was fun. And yeah, shout out to the Jaguars. They did their thing. Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk are both kind of clicking right now. So you for fantasy, you start every single Jaguars option. And yeah, shout out to the Jaguars, and the Texans are right in this one still. CJ Stroud did his thing. Devin Singletary had a decent game, and Tank Dell, Nico Collins, absolute beast through the air. So they were still right there at the end, but the Jaguars came away.
Yeah, this is going to be a game that we're going to be watching for years. This is going to be one of the more competitive ones for the next 10 years. You're going to have CJ Stroud versus Trevor Lawrence, just two absolutely, game-changing franchise quarterbacks, and it'll probably flip-flop back and forth. And I'll just say something. When I roll with the Texans, they lose. When I pick against them, they seem to win. So I'm sorry, Texans fans, if you're watching this and I picked your team, it seems like I am the curse. And whoever I predict will usually lose. So just go with the opposite of what I say. But yeah, I mean, nonetheless, CJ Stroud just absolutely still blowing us away. I mean, 26 of 36, 300 yard, another 300-yard passing game for him, 2 touchdowns. And then he was on the ground. He was their leading rusher for 6 for 47 and a touchdown. So just pretty amazing stuff still from CJ Stroud on a week-to-week basis. And Tank Dell looking like an alpha wide receiver one in this offense. The future's bright. It's bright for both of these teams, and it was a really good game.
Yeah, you kind of know all the fantasy takeaways in this one as well. You're starting Tank Dell every single week, Nico Collins every single week, no question. And you see that CJ Stroud rushing upside, so you're really excited about him in fantasy. And it's just a lot of really good fantasy options in this great game. But we'll get on to the next one. The Steelers went into Cincinnati and beat Jake Browning's Bengals 16-10, and this one went exactly how we predicted as well. Honestly, a lot of these games kind of did. The offense finally worked for the Steelers, kind of ironically, for the first time in a long time, for the first time after Canada got fired. So that's kind of ironic. Kenny Pickett had a good game. This guy, Pat Freiermuth, had an absolute day. So you love to see that. You love to see things starting to get going for the Steelers. And it's something to monitor is Jalen Warren had that fumble. So Najee kind of took over for him, and Najee looked really good. He ended up out carrying him, and he had a really good day. So it could be Najee is the lead back moving forward now.
Yeah, like you said, this was like a 13-10, but it ended up being 16-10 type of game. And I don't know. I just kind of want to call out the Steelers for what they are. It's just kind of like a Mickey Mouse season. Somehow they're 7-4. I will give all the credit in the world to Mike Tomlin for making this team 7-4, because I don't know how they have done that thus far, and they're in the playoffs. Obviously, Jake Browning's starting. If you had Joe Burrow, if he wasn't out for season, it'd be a different story. But right now, I don't know. I'm taking kind of a backseat on the Bengals and even their fantasy options right now. I'm worried. Obviously, Jamar Chase is going to get overfed. I mean, he only had 4 for 81, but still they're going to be targeting him the most. Joe Mixon is a little suspect at this point. He had one big catch at the end that kind of saved his fantasy. He ended up going 2 for 44 through the air and then 8 for 16 on the ground. So it was just a rough outing. The Bengals don't look good. They don't have an identity without Joe Burrow. So obviously their season's over, and it just kind of seems like the Steelers are kind of getting these little Mickey Mouse wins, which is crazy. I mean, it's hard to get wins in the NFL. They're 7-4, which is impressive. But I'm gonna just shout out Mike Tomlin, because for some reason he's been able to get it done year after year after year, and I blame more him for the wins than I do the team.
Yeah, looking at the Steelers' future schedule, they've essentially clinched the playoffs. So that's just crazy. Shout out to Mike Tomlin, like you said. And for fantasy, you can definitely start Najee now moving forward. Jalen Warren's getting a little bit scarier after that fumble. I think he'll still be a decent start with this new rejuvenated offense. And then Pat Freiermuth, like I said, 9 catches, 120 yards. So he's a start. He's definitely a start now. I think this new offense, he's going to get fed a lot more. And Pickens and Deontay, they had decent days. Still a little bit scary of starts. But for the Bengals, yeah, I was going to ask you. You kind of already covered it, but like, how can you even feel about starting the Bengals options? I know like Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon were the only decent players, and they both kind of benefited from catches that were kind of tipped and kind of weird, and they got a lot of yards off tipped catches. So it was just kind of weird game. Gross.
Yeah, I mean, I think going forward, you have to start them, because usually you're not going to have better options, and you're just hoping for the upside and the volume with them. But everyone else after that, I think, is borderline. I mean, even like Tyler Boyd, who I thought was a borderline flex play, I think he's borderline cuttable now. I don't think you're going to see much from him. So yeah, over the rest of the options, I mean, you're moving forward with Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, because you probably don't have anything better. But even T Higgins at this point, when he's healthy and out there, I think you don't start him, and Tyler Boyd you don't start, and obviously none of the tight ends. So yeah, it's just Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase, and you're just hoping for some big plays or upside of some sort.
Yeah, I think you target the Bengals as well. I think you target you target defenses that are playing the Bengals. I mean, and they're playing on Monday Night Football this week, so monitor that, and we'll get on to the next game. The Buccaneers went into Indianapolis and lost to the Colts 27-20. Pretty solid game for the Colts at home. I should have picked them. I knew I should have. But at home they were favored. I knew they were set up to win this game. Gardner Minshew had a pretty good game though. He threw a pick, but Jonathan Taylor, he kind of carried the Colts through the ground in this one. 15 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. Zach Moss also had a decent day, so Colts kind of dominated this one on the ground and got it done. Michael Pittman had 107 yards. Josh Downs had 13 targets. He only had 43 yards, so it didn't really translate, but 13 targets for both Downs and Michael Pittman. You're pretty excited for those options moving forward. And fantasy, and the Buccaneers were competitive like always. They're always in every game.
Yeah, shout out Shane Steichen, probably coach of the year. I mean, kept this Colts team relevant with a pretty banged up roster, losing Anthony Richardson early on. I mean, you got a borderline playoff team with Gardner Minshew starting. So I mean, it's just impressive. Shane Steichen was an absolute steal for the Colts, just brilliant, kind of the quarterback guru. He was Herbert's rookie year, Jalen Hurts. Now he saw Anthony Richardson at the beginning of the year. You see Gardner Minshew winning. So he's just kind of the quarterback whisperer, apparently. And he's keeping this team relevant and playing hard. I mean, these are 2 teams that I said, it's just they're the frisky teams that no one wants to play, because they're going to go out there and play like they have nothing to lose. And so, it was a good game. I think we both picked the Buccaneers, which it just kind of felt like the game of Buccaneers should have won. But, I mean, the Colts end up coming out on top. And, yeah, I mean, like you said, from a fantasy aspect, Jonathan Taylor is just electric at this point. He's just looking like a true RB1. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, they're getting targeted enough to where you can feel confident starting them on a week-to-week basis. And then obviously on the Buccaneers, Rachaad White, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I mean, Kate Otten, even at this point, is a borderline starter every week for tight end. So, but yeah, I mean, Mike Evans and Rachaad White, two alpha, wide receiver one, running back one, just really getting it done.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the main takeaway is the Colts receivers are big options moving forward, and Jonathan Taylor's like a top 3 running back. He's like that 2018 Jonathan Taylor that we drafted first overall. So you love to see it. And with that, we'll get on to the next one. I know Stores is going to be excited to talk about this one. The Saints went into Atlanta and lost to the Falcons 24-15. Ritter did his thing. Ritter got the win in his first start back, and he didn't look terrible. He threw a nice touchdown to your boy Bijan, who had two touchdowns. And what do you know? You give Bijan the ball in the red zone, he's going to score like every time because he's pretty good.
And Bijan would have had 3. There was one pass that Ritter just absolutely piss missile past him to a defender at like the 5. And I mean, you just hit Bijan for a little layup on that HB angle. I mean, he was gonna find a way to get in. So Bijan almost had 3 touchdowns, but I mean, finally, man, this is what we've been waiting for. I mean, 16 carries, 91 yards. You'd get in the red zone touches. He finds his way in the end zone on the ground. And then, yeah, through the air. I mean, it wasn't great. It was 3 for 32, but he did get in the end zone there. So, I mean, that's what we've been screaming from the rooftops is get your 8th overall pick, your best player on your offense involved. Give him touches around the goal line because I mean he's averaging 5.6 yards, or I mean, sorry, he had 5.7 yards a carry. His overall average this year, I'll tell you real quick, is he's averaging 5 yards a carry. I mean, give the guy the ball. I mean, that is just 5 yards a carry. He is every 2 runs he's getting a first down, and he can sniff the end zone really good. And so in back-to-back weeks when they finally, it took them this long to finally realize that they can give him the ball in the red zone and he can score. So yeah, Bijan looking like a real lethal option going forward. Absolutely love to see that. It got me really hyped.
Yeah, beautiful Bijan, and he also has the number 1 easiest schedule for fantasy playoffs. So if you still have if you can still trade for players, trade for Bijan if you can, because he's probably my number 1 trade for target right now with that schedule and with the way he's playing. And I said Ritter played well. He played well enough to kind of make the fantasy options play decent, but he still threw 2 picks. It was still kind of a shit fest with these quarterbacks. Derek Carr was terrible. That's another takeaway. Is Derek Carr was really, really bad, and the Saints might want to switch things up because it was just rough. Like Chris Olave did look really good before his concussion. I'll shout him out. He had 114 yards on 7 catches before going out with a concussion. So shout out to Chris Olave. He's a beast, but Derek Carr still looked rough. He threw a bad pick to Jesse Bates too.
Jesse Bates, man, that is awesome. I just gotta shout him out. Jesse Bates is wow. He's constantly finds, he's constantly around the football, just making plays. But yeah, Derek Carr at this point, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I think I want Jameis, to be honest with you. I think Jameis gives the the Saints a better shot to win week in and week out just because he's a lot more electric with the football and he pushes the ball downfield and he doesn't play so scared. Where Derek Carr is just checked down. I mean, he did air a couple out to Olave before he got hurt, but I mean, still, I don't know. I feel like Derek Carr's time is kind of come and gone, and he plays scared and he doesn't look like he wants to win out there.
Yeah, and monitor those for fantasy. Monitor those Saints receivers injuries because Rashid Shaheed also got hurt, so it could be A.T. Perry as the lead receiver right now. So monitor that. Kamara's kind of coming back down to earth as well in fantasy. But for the Falcons, you can definitely start Drake London. He's looking pretty good. You don't want to start Kyle Pitts, another gross performance, and Bijan's the only other must start.
Yep, 100%.
All right, with that, we'll get on to another gross game. Speaking of gross, the Patriots went into New York and lost to the Giants 10-7. Tommy DeVito did his thing, got the job done in New York. Can't believe this one was allowed to be televised, honestly, but yeah, shout out to Tommy DeVito. He did his thing. Isaiah Hodgins had this fun touchdown. Saquon Barkley really couldn't get anything going, so it is a little bit surprising that the Giants were able to come out with a win, but Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi are just so inept that it doesn't matter who they're playing against. Even Tommy DeVito and a struggling Saquon, they're still not going to get the job done. It's crazy. It's crazy. Ramondre Stevenson is a star. But other than that, the Patriots are the worst team in the NFL. It's crazy.
And I'm going to just throw out another conspiracy theory here. Patriots in their one bad season when Drake May and Caleb Williams are going into the draft. Sus. Let's just call it for what it is, because Bill Belichick is a sus guy. They're acting like, they're falling apart. And I think this is cheese, man. I think this is the Patriots. Honestly, I want to say they're throwing games at this point. I think Bill Belichick is smart enough to know that there's two franchise quarterbacks in this draft, and this was the year to tank for one. And I don't know. There's something that just is not clicking. I mean, Mac Jones is just, I mean, he's just, some of these throws and decisions, it looks like it's just almost like, I don't know, it just looks like it's almost like staged in like a sense for the Patriots that let's just throw this season. Let's go get a franchise guy, and have another franchise quarterback for 10 to 15 years and run back our dynasty. And that's just like I don't know. This is another Stores conspiracy for the week. Just gonna throw that out. Stores conspiracy theory: Bill Belichick throw in for Drake May or Caleb Williams at this point.
I could see it. I definitely like, I feel like you're giving Bill Belichick a lot of respect right there. Like, he might just be a bad coach. He might just completely look like crap, and he's trying. So it could go either way. I would definitely respect that though. If he snags Caleb or Drake and just goes completely off next year, that'd definitely be a fun conspiracy we'll have to look back on. But yeah, I mean, for fantasy, Mac Jones 2 picks, Bailey Zappi 1 pick, Ramondre is the only start for the Patriots. Demario Douglas had 6 catches and 49 yards before he went out with injury, so he is the other start, I guess. Monitor his injury though. Don't fall for Devontae Parker being high up on your waivers. Don't pick up Devontae Parker, Tyquan Thornton, or anyone. It's just Demario Douglas and Ramondre. And then for the Giants, it's Saquon. It's a scary start because, like we saw last week, he can get 30, or like we saw this week, he can get 6 points. So that's a scary start. Saquon's only start though. I wouldn't really fall for the Jalen Hyatt trap. He had 5 catches, 109 yards. Are you falling for Jalen Hyatt? Are you picking him up? I'm not really.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah, I'm not falling for the traps on either of these teams. There's very, very few relevant players, especially when you're putting up this kind of score, 7 to 10. There's just not a lot of room for fantasy points at that point. So yeah, obviously on the Giants, I really am just rocking with Saquon, and that is it. I don't feel comfortable with anyone else on that offense. Then yeah, of course, Ramondre and Demario Douglas. Depending on matchup, obviously Ramondre is a start every week. Douglas, depending on who you're playing, but they seem to be the stars of this team, and that's all I would consider.
All right, and with that, we'll get on to the next game. Another exciting one. The Panthers went into Tennessee and lost to the Titans 17-10. Really stale performances from both the rookies, Bryce Young and Will Levis. Bryce Young 194 passing yards, Will Levis 185. Neither threw a touchdown or a pick. Just really stale. And I'll break this one down really quick for you guys. The main takeaway, the biggest moving factor, and the reason the Titans won this game is Derrick Henry. He's a beast. 2 touchdowns on the ground. Derrick Henry's him, and he was kind of the one star getting going in this game. And there was literally no one else really doing anything. And I guess the question that I want to ask you in this one is, what are your thoughts on Frank Reich? It seemed like the right choice firing Frank Reich. They were just kind of way too incompetent on offense.
Yeah, I think it was a good call. I mean, you're 1-10 and nothing's working. You got to get some new faces in the building. I mean, Frank Wright is a little bit of an older coach. He was struggling in Indianapolis. Maybe we gave him a little too much credit when we were talking about head coaching candidates. And I honestly thought he should have just been hired as an offensive coordinator. I was surprised he actually got a head coaching job. But yeah, I mean, I think Frank Wright's head coaching time has come and gone. I think he'd be an okay offensive coordinator for a team, with a good head coach. But yeah, I mean, when something's not working, you got to change it. And obviously, you got a young quarterback. You don't want to ruin his development process. So I mean, if I was the Panthers, I'd be throwing the bag at Ben Johnson at the end of the offseason. I just put somebody in for interim, and then I'd be throwing the bag around at, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, Ben Johnson. I mean, Bill Belichick. I mean, I would, at this point, you really got to get a big face in there and, hope you can help, Bryce Young. You got a franchise guy possibly, and, hopefully we can get a better development out of him.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to recruit at least like one good offensive coach to Carolina. Hopefully they can get one kind of guru like a Doug Peterson that helped Trevor after his disastrous rookie year. Kind of a similar situation like that for the Panthers. And for fantasy, it is a disaster with no Frank Reich, even Adam Thielen. You're scared to start. Adam Thielen had an absolute disaster game, 1 catch for 2 yards. So you're actually genuinely scared. actively to start. I don't think at this point he was the only start for the Panthers you would even think of. Chuba Hubbard did have a good game in this one, but he still got out carried by Miles Sanders. So like, I'm not starting Chuba Hubbard. I don't even think I'm really rostering him. And then for the Titans, if you're really ballsy, you could start Hopkins. I wouldn't. And Derrick Henry had a really good game because this was a great matchup. But I will say beware, because if the Titans aren't in a good matchup, they're going to be down, and Tyjae Spears is going to be playing a lot more. So just beware. There's some gross fantasy options in this one. Just beware of them all.
Preach. You just said that perfectly. I do want to say though, it couldn't be worse for the Panthers. They have now the number 1 overall pick that is now given to the Bears. They gave up DJ Moore. It's brutal. It's so brutal. I mean, if they gave up so much to get Bryce Young, and they gave up the entire freaking barn to go get him. And I mean, that ends up being just a handful of picks. I mean, this first overall pick, obviously, I don't know if the Bears decide to move off of Justin Fields. I don't know if they'll do that yet, but I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, it's just brutal. And I feel, because the Panthers need they need an option so bad. They need a true alpha wide receiver one. They gave away DJ Moore, and now they might have just missed the chance to get, Bryce Young, Marvin Harrison Jr. by giving up, that pick. So it's just brutal.
Yeah, I definitely have faith in Bryce Young, but they're going to need to get a lot better pieces and more competent pieces around him next year. But that we'll get on to the next one. The Browns went into Denver and lost to the Broncos 29-12. A statement game for Russ, honestly, against the best defense in the NFL. You don't really see 29 points going up against the Browns too often this year. And yeah, just a really good, solid, surgical game from Russ. He had a really good game. He kind of had everyone involved. Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, even Marvin Mims had a good game. So Russ just looks completely sharp again. He's just so efficient. He hasn't thrown a pick in the last 5 games over this Broncos 5-game win streak. So it's awesome football from Russ. Shout out to him, and shout out to the Broncos offensive line. I said that the main X factor in this game would be Myles Garrett versus Garrett Bowles, and Myles Garrett didn't even touch Russell Wilson once this entire game. Garrett Bowles has been top tier. The Broncos offensive line has been like a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. No one's really talking about it. They've had the same unit every single week this year. So they're just really good chemistry, and they're playing really good football. The Broncos defense is playing great. I love to see it. The Broncos are playing some really good football.
Yeah, just an absolute resurgence from the Broncos, offense and defensively. Really sound, good team football they've been playing, and just no mistakes. I mean, it's just been everything. It's just been football you want to see. It's just really sound. I mean, there just hasn't been a lot of mistakes. All 3 sides of the ball are complementary to each other. I mean, the Broncos pass rush was actually able to get home against a really good Browns offensive line. And then, the Broncos were able to put up 29 points against one of the better defenses in the NFL, if not the best. So, yeah, shout out to the Broncos. I mean, there's really not too much to take away. They're on a roll. What is this, a 5 or 6 game winning streak at this point?
5.
Okay, 5-game winning streak. I mean, shout out to Sean Payton. I mean, he's just really flipped this season around. And it's just crazy because the Broncos, the Broncos are really looking like, you're gonna probably end up getting a wild card spot, and then could be a very lethal team to play in the playoffs. So, I mean, just shout out to all the Broncos. Javonte Williams playing really good, Cortland Sutton, and then the whole defensive side of the ball is just rejuvenating themselves, and it's just looking really, really nice. And then the Browns, obviously, with the loss of Deshaun Watson, I didn't think it'd affect them that much, but looks like they just can't put up much numbers right now. It looks like, I mean, Dorian Thompson-Robinson didn't play a horrible. Did he end up getting benched for PJ Walker, right?
No, he got hurt. Baron
Oh,
Browning sacked him, and then he ended up getting hurt, and PJ Walker finished the game.
okay. But yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, the Browns, they didn't really find an identity through the air or even on the ground. I mean, Jerome Ford averaged 7.2 yards a carry, 9 for 65. But I mean, he only had 9 carries. Kareem Hunt only 7 for 22. So I mean, the Broncos just really, really shut the Browns offense down. And there's just kind of no looking back, and Russ is just playing super surgical. So shout out to the Broncos. Browns look to be on the decline now, moving forward, just with that offense. Broncos are on the rise. So this will be interesting to see how these 2 teams finish the year.
Yeah, big shout out to Sean Payton. He has the Broncos playing really good football. You kind of feel like they're gonna be competitive with any team that they play. Even they have the Lions in a few weeks. They have the Texans this week. I feel like the Broncos are gonna be really competitive in those games. And for fantasy, for the Browns, my only takeaway is Jerome Ford is a beast. He didn't have a great statistical game, but he looked really good. And David Njoku, he is definitely a tight end option moving forward. He gets a lot of targets with Amari Cooper's kind of injury question. I think David Njoku was a big play the next few weeks. And then for the Broncos, it's kind of the same. Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton. I don't think you start Jerry Jeudy. So it's just that. And Russell Wilson's a good option as well.
100%. Yeah. I mean, Cortland Sutton, really the Broncos wide receiver one in this offense. And I think he'll have some big weeks moving forward.
Yeah. Shout out to Cortland Sutton. I disrespected him way too much last year. He's been awesome. But we'll get on to the next game. The Rams went into Arizona and kind of just dominated the Cardinals 37-14. They really did go in there and just dominate. The Cardinals didn't look too competent. They didn't look too competitive like they have really all year. They've been pretty competitive, but Kyler was definitely rough in this one. A rough game for Kyler. The Cardinals couldn't get anything going on the ground at all because they were down from the start and kind of just had to try to pass it. And yeah, the Rams kind of just honestly dominated this one without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, which is kind of the biggest takeaway. Is Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp did absolutely nothing. They were both Goof of the Week candidates, and the Rams still dominated this one with Kyron Williams and Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, I mean, Kyron Williams, just absolutely legacy game. Like Dan said at the beginning, in any other week, he would have been the stud of the week. I mean, 16 carries, 143 yards, 8.9 yards a carry. And then through the air, six receptions for 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just absolutely electric. If you have him on your fantasy team moving forward, you are sitting pretty. You are so lucky. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Cooper Kupp has really just been kind of irrelevant from this offense. He was decent in the first 2 games back, and then I mean, I'm just gonna go over his stats for the last few games. So Green Bay 2 for 48, Seattle 1 for 11. Last week 3 for 18. I mean, he has just been irrelevant. He's just disappeared. And I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, Cooper Kupp is kind of just. I think at this point, I don't even know. I mean, I feel like you're forced to start him in fantasy, but I don't know. It's just it's bad.
That's the crappy part is you feel like you have to start him, but it's such a disaster. You almost are starting him knowing you're going to get like 6 points at this point. That's kind of how I felt this week, even with this great Cardinals matchup. It's just bad. Stafford wasn't even looking at him. It's just a completely different Rams offense. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's completely flip flopped. But I mean, at the end of the day, big statement win from the Rams without even using their 2 best players. I mean, really just beat up on this Cardinals team. I mean, Kyler Murray really didn't play, in my opinion, horrible. But yeah, the Cardinals it kind of just shows the weakness of their roster overall when you get beat by the Rams, by this margin. And at this point, if I'm the Cardinals, looking forward to the offseason, trying to rebuild, revamp the offensive line, get Kyler some more weapons, build on that defense. I mean, there's quite a ways to go for the Cardinals, but we'll see how this offseason carries them.
Yeah, we both picked the Cardinals because we both are just really confident and high on Kyler Murray. But if the Cardinals are going to be playing like this, then they might just be looking for that first overall pick at this point. And I might be really, really wary to pick the Cardinals moving forward. And for fantasy, you're still very happy with Trey McBride. Hollywood Brown finally has his first good game with Kyler Murray back. So you're happy about Hollywood. He's a start moving forward. And like you said, Kyron Williams is a god tier. You're so happy if you have him moving forward. And Puka and Kupp, you kind of have to start, even though it's very scary.
What about James Conner? He's kind of just been slowly irrelevant. I mean, he's getting in this game he didn't really get any volume. Previous games he's been getting volume. I mean, he had four receptions for 5 yards, which gave him 4.5 fantasy points from that aspect. But on the ground it was 6 for 27.
Terrible game script for James Conner. I mean, he had 6 carries. Michael Carter had 4 carries. Amari DiMercado had 3 carries. So they weren't really running the ball at all because they were down from the jump and they couldn't really run the ball at all. So this was a terrible game script. It will get better, but it's kind of like Mixon. It's just a bad offense, so it's really scary.
And Kyler's vulturing all the short yards touchdowns at this point too for the last couple weeks. James Conner has not found his way in the end zone. Kyler Murray, I believe, has now had 3 rushing touchdowns within the 5.
Yep.
Yeah, so don't love to see that. I'd be weary on James Conner moving forward.
You can almost lock in a Kyler Murray rushing touchdown every game. And yeah, James Conner, you're not like forcing him out of your lineup, but if you have better options, you could definitely look that way. And we'll get on to the next game, a really electric one. The Bills went into Philadelphia and lost in overtime 37-34. The Eagles came out on top. It was a great game, kind of Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, both of our stud of the weeks, just dueling and battling it out. It's kind of how it kind of went how we thought it would be. We both said it would be the game of the week, and it definitely delivered. Just a great game with two alien quarterbacks doing their thing, and yeah, Josh Allen 339 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, 81 yards and 2 touchdowns through the ground. Jalen Hurts 200 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, and Jalen Hurts 65 yards, 2 touchdowns through the ground. So both of them just carried their teams and did their things and made this one a very electric game to watch.
Yeah, and at this point, Eagles, I think, have to be my. I'm just gonna say it right here. I think Eagles are my number one team in the NFL. Even when it's not a big win, they're 10-1. They've found ways to win. They've grinded out games. They've figured out a way out of every single game, and I think that just shows the resilience in this team and just from how well they are built from top to bottom. I mean, when you get Zacchaeus involved, and just all these random guys just look good. It's just crazy. And what do you think about DeAndre Swift? I mean, he really seems to have a just like a bounce back from his time in Detroit here. He just looks electric. I don't know if that's more offensive line, or do you think, I mean, DeAndre Swift is just him. I mean, his cuts and everything just look incredible.
Yeah, I mean the offensive line's helping him, but the offensive line kind of just complements the way he runs perfectly because he runs really hard and he is just running great. He's every single week he's been great. Not really through the air, but just on the ground, he's been a really good running back. Something that Miles Sanders wishes he could say for sure.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I mean, this Eagles team just fantastic performances. I mean, they find a way out of every single game. So shout out to them. Two big wins in a row against the Chiefs and the Bills. So I mean, those are two statement wins. But I mean, the Bills do look better. Obviously, their defense gave up 37 points, which you don't like to see. But I mean, Josh Allen got it done. He played well enough to win. They could have came out of this game easy with a win. Gabe Davis had a really good game. Looks like Stephon Diggs finally had his bounce back game with 6 for 74 and a touchdown. So, I mean, the Bills are still in the mix. I'm kind of coming off the panic a little less. I think they'll find their way into a playoff spot. But yeah, both really good teams, and this was the game of the week.
Yeah, Bills looked kind of back. They looked kind of like the same old Bills. So you do like to see that moving forward. And they do need to feed Kincaid more. They were feeding him at the beginning and they kind of stopped. Gabe Davis kind of took all of his targets at the end, I guess, and he did good with them. But feed Kincaid more. He's so good. He's just so good. You can see it. He's like a top tight end already. I love Kincaid. And for fantasy, you're starting Kincaid, Diggs. If you start Gabe Davis, he's going to get you 0 points. So be wary of that. If you bench him, he'll score 100. So it's kind of hard with that. And James Cook is playing himself into contention as well. And for the Eagles, you start everyone. If Goddard's not playing, Devontae Smith is going to be the star, and you start everyone.
Yeah, love the Gabe Davis quote right there. That's absolute facts. So just know that's what's gonna happen. If you start Gabe Davis, you're getting 3. If you bench him, it'll probably be 100. So like Dan said.
Unless you're starting him against me, I played against Gabe Davis this week, of course, so that's why he went off. That's the one reason. And with that, we'll get on to the next one. The Chiefs went into Vegas and handled the Raiders very easily, 31-17. The run first Chiefs, they do what they do best, and they ran the ball every single play. First down, second down, third down, they're gonna run the ball. Andy Reid loves running the ball. It's crazy. I can't handle it as a Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce fantasy manager owner. I can't handle it, but it's because the Chiefs. The reasoning is because the Chiefs could win this game so easily. They really don't need to try. They could have just ran the ball every play and won the game, and that's what they did. They ran the ball every play and easily won this game handily. Shout out to the Raiders for trying, but the Chiefs are a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, not too much of a takeaway. This is kind of the result you're going to see in every Chiefs Raiders game. It's Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day versus Aiden O'Connell. Andy Reid, versus I can't even remember the new Raiders head coach's name.
Antonio Pierce.
Antonio Pierce, blank my mind. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the results you're gonna see when you try me with a sorry ass team like the Raiders when you're playing the Chiefs. Just kidding. The Raiders are actually playing a lot better than what they should be playing. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's at the end of at the end of the day, it's just these two teams playing each other, and the Chiefs are gonna find a way with whatever they do to win.
Yeah, and fantasy takeaways, there, like you said, there's not much to take away because this game went exactly how you expected. But Rashee Rice, 8 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. He's their leading receiver. It looks like they're going to really lean in on Rice and Kelsey as their two main receivers. So you do like to see that. I wouldn't really fall for the Justin Watson trap. He's starting to get some hype and waiver claims. I wouldn't really fall for Justin Watson. I would just really try to target Rashee Rice in a trade or something because he is awesome. And Isaiah Pacheco is a must start with, especially with no Jerick McKinnon. I didn't even know he was hurt. Like they didn't even announce that he was hurt, but he didn't play. So with no Jerick McKinnon, Isaiah Pacheco is a must start for the run first Chiefs. And then for the Raiders, you start Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Jacoby Myers is a scary start. He'll do good if he played against me like he did this week, but I don't really think you could start Jacoby Myers any other week the rest of the season.
As long as you just got to see if he's playing Dan in his fantasy matchup, and then you're like, okay, it's a pretty safe bet at that point. We're gonna roll with Jacoby Myers.
Unreal.
But yeah, no, I agree. It's just really Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, and you got to be weary of Jacoby Myers. And then yeah, of course Pacheco, Rashee Rice, and then obviously Kelsey and Mahomes. But Rashee Rice really looking, really coming into his own, and Isaiah Pacheco really coming into his own here at the end of the season too, which we knew he's a good player. But with the run first Chiefs, you got to be confident in Pacheco week to week.
Yeah, run first Chiefs. That's why I had this picture of Pacheco. They're absolute star right now. So well, shout out to the run first Chiefs. They keep it rolling on the ground. But we'll get on to the Sunday night football game. The Ravens went into LA and beat the Chargers 20-10. And I'll just let you break this one down.
Shirts, man. The Chargers for myself and the whole fandom, like they hang into every game and they just give us this little hope. We all, us Chargers we went into this game with absolutely no expectations, but here we are in the fourth quarter. We're like, oh my hell, we might actually win. This actually might happen, but any thought of that will eventually, when it comes down to the final minute, our hearts will just be crumbled up into a piece of paper and chucked in the trash can, and we'll just be stepped on like freaking ants. And we're gonna feel bad for the rest of the week because that's just what being a Chargers fan is. But yeah, I mean, this one was brutal. I mean, the Chargers really had a big opening statement drive that was obviously crushed by some of the worst officiating I've ever seen. Herbert was hit out of bounds, blatantly obvious. I mean, there was a ref standing right there, saw the whole thing, and Herbert getting hit out of bounds ended up costing the Chargers 15 yards, and we just had to kick a field goal. And then from there, it just was kind of over. There was no momentum. There was no offense. I mean, the Ravens, shout out to the Chargers defense. I mean, the Chargers turned over the ball on offense 4 different times and, still had a chance to win at the end of the game. The defense held Lamar Jackson. They got the ball back to the offense, and obviously the offense, there's big Austin Eckler drop. Somebody forgot to block. Who was it at the end of the game? Wasn't Jadeveon Clowney? I think it was. It might have been Jadeveon Clowney came off the edge, unblocked on 4th down, which ultimately ended up in Herbert just having to just chuck the ball. And that was it. I mean, I think the moral of the story is the Chargers will find, sorry to anyone who's listening to my rant, the Chargers will find a way to lose. They will have every opportunity to win the game, but they will find a way to lose. And it doesn't matter what it is or how, they will find a new, unique way. I mean, Justin Tucker missing a field goal at the end of the game is a gift from God. And they figure out a way to lose. I mean, that was like a sign from the heavens. Like, this guy is automatic. He doesn't miss field goals ever. He missed a freaking 48-yard field goal, and you find a way to lose. And yeah, I mean, shout out to the Ravens. They got it done. Zay Flowers was absolutely electric. Keaton Mitchell was really had some juice in all of his runs. But the Chargers, you're playing the Chargers, they'll find a way to lose.
Yeah, they'll find a way to lose. Like they're 2 absolute star players on offense that you have to lean on will somehow fumble. Keenan and Eckler both fumble. Like that's really not acceptable at all during the game. That was almost like depressing for me. Like that just felt depressing. Like going into the locker room as a Chargers player, I would have felt demoralized. The 2-star players kind of fumbling that game, and it did feel depressing. And they were there, and they were in there at the end, and they just couldn't get it done. I guess the Ravens defense is really good as well. So shout out to the Ravens defense. They played solid. Kyle Hamilton is an absolute freak. But yeah, like you said, the Chargers defense did tighten up. They made it so they were in the game the whole game. Lamar wasn't able to really do anything special, do any of his special plays and get anything too big. So yeah, shout out to the Chargers defense. It wasn't a bad performance, but just didn't get the job done. A little bit depressing.
Yeah, I mean, the defense plays good, the offense won't play good. If the offense plays good, the defense won't play good. So I mean, maybe one day they'll figure it out, but I don't know. Under this regime, under this management, and just it doesn't seem like anything is going to change. Obviously, there's been some devastating injuries to the Chargers, but at the end of the day, I don't think anyone can really pinpoint one reason why the Chargers lose. It's just in their DNA to find a way to lose, and I don't know how you fix it. Obviously, this is their their big go all in year. You got Kellen Moore. I mean, obviously, you lose Corey Linsley, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, which absolutely devastates your offense. But I don't know. They can't seem to figure it out. But I mean, on the other side of the ball, you got a very competent John Harbaugh and a confident Ravens team who has arguably one of the best, top 3 defense in the NFL, who just gets turnovers, makes plays, and is just able to adjust. I mean, the Ravens add Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy mid-season, and look what that did for their team. So it just shows competent coaching and competent, general manager can really change an organization, and the way they win or lose.
Yeah, I think the Chargers team just needs a kick in the ass in general. So yeah, their front office probably needs a change. Just a culture change is what they need badly, I think, personally. And for fantasy, interesting for the Ravens, Isaiah Likely was pretty good. So if you're a Mark Andrews owner and you got Isaiah Likely, you're pretty excited about that. And Keaton Mitchell was kind of like their main starter. He didn't get anything too big going, but he did have some electric plays. So Keaton Mitchell, you are excited for. Zay Flowers, like you said, 2 touchdowns, that nice rushing touchdown too. He's an absolute beast. Odell looks actually decent. So Ravens options are looking decent. And then for the Chargers, it's Keenan Allen, an absolute star, like a top 3 receiver. He's been absolutely awesome. But Austin Eckler, our goof of the week. How are you feeling about Eckler? You have to start him, but do you think he's going to start doing better? The Chargers are going to need to win these next few games. They have some big games coming up.
I don't know how I feel about Eckler, to be honest with you. At this point, it's just like, I mean, at this point, the Chargers season is kind of toast. And so it's like, do they start leaning on their younger players? They start adding Elijah Dotson and Josh Kelly and giving them carries. I don't know. Maybe they try and win out. I don't know. I think next week will kind of determine what really happens for the rest of the season against a pretty poor Patriots team. They lose that game, then I think it's bench everyone except Keenan and Herbert. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Eckler is a borderline start for me, which is crazy because he's been the fantasy king and the most touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. But he's not the same old Eckler. So, I mean, I think moving into next week, you start him, and then I think you reevaluate from there.
Yeah, just monitor it. And with that, we'll get on to the last game of the week, the Monday Night Football game. The Bears went into Minnesota and beat the Vikings 12-10. Yawn for sure. Yawn of a Monday Night Football game wasn't the most exciting game. Not gonna lie, fell asleep a few times. But Josh Dobbs really wasn't that special, to be honest. He really wasn't electric in this one. He was kind of he's a smart guy. Josh Dobbs is obviously a genius. Like, he genuinely is a genius of a person. But I don't know if it's like once he has too much to handle in an offense, he can't handle it or something. But he just looked overwhelmed out there. Once he has like the full playbook in his head, he just looked confused and overwhelmed, and he was kind of running around confused. I think he plays his best when he just doesn't really have to think, and when he just goes out there and reacts. And I think that's Josh Dobbs. He's just a baller and a gamer, and he reacts. He's not really like a Kirk Cousins. So I think Kevin O'Connell needs to figure that out, or they need to switch it up, because it's not really a good mesh right now. And Justin Jefferson coming back after the bye. So they're going to have to figure some things out. The Vikings looked rough and lost to the division rival, NFC North rival, Bears. And it's the Bears. It's just Justin Fields and the Bears. So you just lost to the Bears. And shout out, I don't want to be too disrespectful. The Bears defense is playing good. Shout out to Eberflus. They're looking like Eberflus solid defense. So shout out to the Bears.
Yeah, you lost to the Bears without the Bears scoring a touchdown. You lost off of 4 field goals and lost. But yeah, kind of like what you said. I mean, it's just like Josh Dobbs was kind of like overwhelmed, and like when he goes out there and he has no expectations or anything, that's when he seems to play his best football. But yeah, he looked overwhelmed and confused out there. And this Bears defense really did play super electric and good. And when it mattered, Justin Fields, he came up big. I mean, he fumbled. It looked like he almost fumbled the game away. The defense came up big. He got one more opportunity, and he goes down there and he throws a laser to DJ Moore. So, your big time players came up in big time moments. And, at this point, it's just Justin Fields is kind of fighting for his job, and trying to give the Bears a reason why they shouldn't replace him with a Caleb Williams or a Drake May. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. I mean, I thought it was an okay game from Fields. I don't think he played great. They did enough to win. That's all that matters. And it is a tough Vikings team that they got the win over. But yeah, I mean, just an overall yawn, boring, weird game. Khalil Herbert in their fantasy from the Bears is just rough. I don't know. The Bears are both of these teams kind of seem like they're a little in shambles going forward right now. It just seems like they both don't really have an identity, and it's just weird. This was a weird game. The Bears got it done, but just weird how they played in general.
Weird divisional game for sure. And yeah, like you said, for fantasy, Khalil Herbert, you can't be starting Khalil Herbert or Roschon Johnson. There was no Deontay Foreman in this one, and Roschon Johnson got the bulk of the carries, but even he didn't have the most carries because Justin Fields is the main running back, and he is the spark in the running game. So don't start Bears running backs. I think we've learned that lesson. And a funny stat for Justin Fields, he did look decent. He is playing some decent football, and he is trying out for the rest of the season. So it will be fun to watch him. But a funny stat, 16 of his completions were at or below the line of scrimmage. That's pretty crazy. It did seem like watching this game, every single play was just a screen right out to DJ Moore, just instantly. First down, second down, just a screen, left, right. They were just switching up their screens. It was kind of funny. But yeah, so DJ Moore, you fire up in fantasy, 11 catches, 114 yards. You love that. He was electric. And Nicole Kmet is the only other start for the Bears. And then for the Vikings, Alexander Mattison did look pretty good. I actually was kind of happy with what I saw from Alexander Mattison, not production-wise or anything, just on the field. He looked pretty good rushing it. And Joshua Dobbs, 4 picks. I don't think you really want to be starting him after that performance moving forward. It's a scary one. I would look for like a Brock Purdy option, like I've been kind of saying the last few weeks. And then TJ Hawkinson, tight end 1, just an absolute star. You keep firing up him, and Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson will be back next time the Vikings play. So monitor that.
Yeah, 100%. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison's it's gonna be fun to see how they do. Obviously, with Josh Dobbs, it'll be interesting to see how he distributes to Jettas. But yeah, I'm excited to monitor that one. I think both of them being on the field might actually help both of them out because it's kind of hard to double both of them. And then yeah, DJ Moore really is the alpha wide receiver 1. He's already come over 1,000 yards on the season, 6 touchdowns. So you just got to fire him up and feel confident about it.
And then last question for you. If you're the Vikings quarterback or if you're the Vikings coach, are you starting Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, or Jaren Hall moving forward?
I mean, that's a tough question. I kind of would like to see a little bit more from Jaren Hall, just because he played 1 drive and it was actually a pretty good drive before he was injured and went out. I mean, I feel like Josh Dobbs probably gives you the best chance to win, and you're still playoff competitive at this point. So I mean, in all reality, I'm still rolling with Josh Dobbs. But I mean, if it starts going south, I think I'm firing Jaren Hall up next just to see what I got. I mean, it was a pretty brutal game. 4 interceptions is kind of ridiculous and should never happen. So I mean, if you have another game like that, I think it'd be worth it to fire Jaren Hall up and just see what you have there.
Yeah, I agree. You put Dobbs on a leash and just you have Hall right there ready for him because I think he's a pretty decent quarterback as well. But yeah, fun covering all the games this week. There's a lot of games to go over, but yeah, fun recapping this holiday weekend. And yeah, hope you had a good one.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Peace, guys.
Peace.